Hey guys, welcome back. In the last lesson, we took a look at how to create and set up the environment, as well as smack in our 3D text in the scene here. In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at compositing the 3D text, as well as doing some overall color correction, color grading, as well as animation and other enhancements. So let's get started. As you can see, the text really stands out here. It's not blended in at all. And the first thing you can do is apply some color grading, color correction. So I'm going to go select our element 3D layer. I'm going to go to Effect, Color Correction, Curves, as well as Effect, Color Correction, and Tint. I'm going to shut the tint for now, and I'm going to go into the blue and just crank up the blue. And then we can decrease the greens a little bit, and then decrease the reds, just so that we have a nice cool color to match our scene. And then we'll also go to the RGB and add some contrast to this. It's looking a lot nicer now. We can apply the tint and just kind of desaturate it just a little bit. So that's starting to look a little bit better. Let's go ahead and work on the basic animation. So we'll go to the camera, we'll go into the transform, we'll hit keyframes for the point of interest as well as the position. And we'll hit C to get the orbit tool. And maybe we'll start maybe down here. Maybe zoom out a little bit. And then we will move forward 5 seconds. We'll definitely zoom in. And we will orbit around the other side. Maybe up here. So we have a rough animation kind of out, and then we're going to zoom all the way in and orbit around. And obviously we need to extend our particle system because our smoke layers and our rain is kind of looking odd right now. So we'll go into the cloud. We'll expand the Z, expand the X, expand the Y a little bit. And we'll just change the position in Z a little bit. It will crank up the number of particles. So now we have a little bit better volumetric area here. And we will adjust the rain layer so we can kind of see the emitter up here. So we'll go to the rain, we'll pull up the position in Y again, maybe increase the number of particles, and that is looking a little bit better. Let me just adjust the initial angle a little bit. And then I'm going to select all of our keyframes. So we'll select this keyframe here. We'll go into the graph editor and we will make sure our keyframes are selected, and we will pull these handles here. So we're going to have an initial swing. So it's going to swing first, and then kind of slow down and ease to the end here. So we're going to get out of the graph editor. We're also going to easy ease the point of interest. So hit F9 to easy ease. So now let's go ahead and do a quick RAM preview. So that's looking pretty interesting. We can do a lot more with the lighting here, but I'll let you guys finesse with the lighting because it does take a little while. So I'm gonna move forward. That looks pretty good for the camera. Now let's go and take a look at how to composite the 3D text to the smoke a little bit better, because right now, as you can see, we have our element 3D layer and it's directly above our cloud particles. So the cloud particles are directly underneath the 3D text. So as you can see, it kind of stands out, it pops out. The smoke doesn't really cover the text at all because, again, it's underneath the text, and it doesn't look like the text is being engulfed in a nice storm. It just seems like it's later flat on top of it. It's not really composited in. So let's go and take a look at depth compositing. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate our 3D text layer, and we'll call this depth pass. And we're going to use this depth pass to cut out certain sections of our cloud particles so that it looks like the text is composited into the 3D particle system, or the cloud system here. So for an example here, if I move the cloud particles in front of the text, you can see it looks like a mess because there's no variation. The cloud layers is directly just flat on top of the text, and it doesn't look integrated in at all. So as you can see, it looks pretty flat, kind of just flat on to the text. So we're gonna take a look at how to fix that using the depth pass. We're gonna go to the depth pass here, turn it back on, and we'll go and turn off the curves, or no, delete it, delete the tint. We'll go under output, under show, we'll change it from composite to Z depth, and that's going to create a Z depth. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this if you're familiar with the 3D application. See here, we're going to go, close this up. So right now our Z depth is looking pretty nasty. We have no variation in depth, and that's because overall we don't have that much depth in our 3D text overall compared to the whole scene here. So there's not much depth here. So what we can do to kind of enhance the Z depth to get that, that fake depth within our Z pass or Z depth pass is to add some color correction. So we'll select our depth pass layer. We'll go to Effect, Color Correction. We'll apply an exposure. And for this first exposure, I'm going to increase the exposure and then decrease the gamma correction. So I'm going to adjust some of this stuff to where we get more variation. So the white area is the area closest to the camera, and the kind of the darker areas, the black areas, are further away from the camera. And you want to try to get as much variation of color as possible so that element can see, okay, this is closest to the camera, I'm going to cut this part of the cloud, or this part is furthest away from the camera, I'm not going to cut any part of the cloud. So it works the same way as a regular Z depth. We're just kind of enhancing it here. And then we can duplicate the exposure again to even add more contrast. So I'm gonna increase the gamma correction for the second one just a little bit and decrease the exposure. Just kind of play around with it. And you can see that we're getting a little bit of banding, but that's okay for this particular example. So just like that, we have a Z depth pass now. So as you see, this part here is closest to the camera, so it's nice and white. And this part is kind of further away, so it's kind of dark. And we're going to use this to kind of cut the clouds here. So we'll shut that off. Right now, this is what the text looks like when the cloud particles is above the text. Pretty nasty. So I'm going to make sure that our depth pass is definitely above the cloud particles layer. And for the cloud particles, I'm going to switch the modes and change the track matte from no track matte to luma matte inverted. And as you can see here, our text is looking a lot more integrated. So as you can see, we have our nice cloud covering this text here. It's kind of covering the side of the S here. But as our storm text right here is not really being covered by any clouds. If we kind of just scrub through, you can kind of see that our text is a lot more integrated. Especially right here, this kind of cloud puff is kind of covering part of the text, but not the whole text. And it definitely looks a lot better than, not using a matte at all. So we just go no track matte. This is what it looks like flat on, not composited. And then by using a simple depth pass, an element, we can create some more variation. So if we take a look at the cloud particles now with the depth pass on, you can see that our cloud particles look pretty normal, but there are some cuts within the clouds so that we have some more variation. So this part of the text is covered by clouds, this part is not. And that's just going to create a sense of depth and integration and kind of submerging text within our clouds. So just a simple tip. Let's go ahead and work on the final color correction and grading. So I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. We'll call this color correction. And for this, I like to use something called Magic Bullet Looks by Red Giant. So before we hop into the looks editor, right now we have no background. So as you can see, we kind of have transparency here. So I'm going to create a new background, call it BG, and we'll just make it black. And we'll just drag it underneath everything so we have proper, rendering, no weird transparency holes or anything like that. Now we can hop into the looks editor. And here we have our scene. I'm going to go into the looks here. And, as you can see, we have a lot of different presets, built-in presets to select and choose from. So we can go browse through, the different presets here, the blue chrome, basic grunge. There's a whole bunch of presets that you can choose from. I think I'm going to choose maybe the, let's see here. We can check out the Sunny Delight, which is kind of like this grungy green warm color. I'm gonna go ahead and go into the warm cool. Maybe we can change it a little bit, make it just a little bit cooler. And then maybe go into the color contrast and just change this up a little bit. And then adjust the fill light. Something like that. And we'll go into the tools, wob into the lens, maybe add a vignette, kind of wrap it around, tighten it up a little bit, and adjust the fall off. Just like that. And we can hit OK. And we have a nice kind of filmic cinematic look. If we just shut off the color correction layer, you can see that we have kind of a flat image, really bland looking image. And if we turn on the adjustment layer, we have this nice full detailed color correction, color grading looks. So one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some artificial letterboxing to kind of focus the attention on the particular animation. I'm also going to add a few more adjustments to the text. So I'm going to go to the element 3D text. I'm going to go to effect, blur, and apply a fast blur. Because right now, if we zoom all the way in at full res, you can see that the text is a little bit sharp compared to everything else. So I'm just going to blur it by maybe 0.5 and then repeat the edge pixels. As you can see, it kind of just softens it up a little bit overall, and it makes it look more blended into the scene here. So we have that. Now for the letterboxing, there's so many ways to create letterboxing. I'm going to create a fake letterboxing by using a black solid. We'll call this letterbox. And I'll just get a rectangular mask tool, turn on my title safe, and create a rough letterbox here. Or you can just crop the whole animation if you want. I'm going to select the mask, set it to subtract, turn off my title safe. So we have some nice letterboxing. And then finally, I'm going to add some grain on top of it just to kind of reduce the banding as well as kind of just blend everything together. So I'm going to add a grain effect to the adjustment layer. Call this grain. I'm going to change the viewing mode from preview to final output and just decrease the intensity to maybe 0.5 or so. So maybe 0.3. And then I'll bring this project into another main comp. I'll call this one final comp. So in this composition, I like to do fade in and fade outs. So for this composition, we'll just hit T on the keyboard, hit a keyframe, set it to 0. We'll move forward a few frames and crank up the opacity to 100. We'll move to the end and then maybe hit a keyframe here. And right before the end, set the keyframe to 0. We'll select all the keyframes, maybe hit F9 to easy ease or go to keyframe assistant easy ease. Maybe adjust some of these things so we have a nice fade in, fade out. Now one last thing I forgot to do was to create some very basic rotation animation for the 3D text here. So what we can do is go into the text, go into group 1, and go into the particle look, multi-object, select multi-object, and we can go to the beginning where the animation starts. And then we can hit a keyframe for, let's see here, the rotation in Y. Kind of like this. We'll hit a keyframe and we'll move forward maybe 3 seconds in and we'll set it to 0. So essentially all it is just text rotating. Just gives it some more liveliness to it. And we can copy these keyframes into the depth pass as well, because remember our depth pass is exactly the same thing as our 3D text. It's just a depth pass. So we have these keyframes here. Let me just move to the beginning and then paste it in. And we'll easy ease these keyframes. Hit F9 or go to keyframe assistant easy ease. And then for the 3D text, I'm going to go into the render settings, go to ambient occlusion, and just turn on ambient occlusion. And just play around with the intensity a little bit to add some more I guess, variation again to it, and then increase the radius a little bit. And then we will go ahead and enable motion blur for all these particles. So we'll enable motion blur for the smoke particles here, cloud particles, enable the motion blur, and enable the motion blur for the 3D text. So there we go. And we'll jump into the final composition and do one last RAM preview here. So let's go ahead and take a look. So definitely very, very cool. We have this nice, crazy stormy environment with all the rain, all the nice particles flying around, smoke particles, and our text looks a little bit more integrated within our scene. And then we have this nice little animation, simple animation to kind of, create a sense of movement within the animation. So now, of course, this animation could use a lot more tweaking, especially with the lights. But of course, I'll let you guys play around with that and finesse with it. You can also add some depth of field. You can add some lens flares in here. You can add some terrain, mountains using Element 3D or Cinema 4D, or whatever you want. But I kind of give you guys the idea on how to create something like this. And I think overall we created a nice little environment for animation, and then you guys can, add on objects, lens flares, whatever you want to enhance it. But overall, pretty decent animation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. So in the next lesson, we're going to be taking a look at how to create a nice Earth opener sequence animation. So we'll take a look at creating a nice epic Earth scene. So until next time, my name is Vincent Wynn. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Bye guys.